On this busy factory line, two workers position a large aluminum ladder beside an active station. Then one small mistake causes the entire setup to lose stability. Never, ever leave a tall, freestanding A-frame ladder unsecured, unbalanced, or improperly footed in a high-traffic workspace, especially near stationary personnel. In this loading yard, a worker rides atop a towering stack of mattresses until the entire load becomes unstable. Never climb on top of an overstacked, unsecured payload, and never tighten cargo straps while another person is positioned on the unstable load above. Soft, stacked materials like mattresses compress unpredictably under tension. The moment a ground worker ratchets the strap, uneven pressure can shift the stack's center of gravity past the edge of the truck bed, turning the towering freight into a serious stability hazard. To prevent this, transport crews must follow vehicle height limits and never exceed the safe stacking geometry of compressible freight. At this active roadside stop, a sanitation crew steps out to collect trash. Then an approaching vehicle enters the work zone without adequate caution. Never exit a heavy service vehicle into a live traffic lane without ensuring a visible safety perimeter is established to reroute oncoming motorists. An inattentive or fast-moving driver encountering that sudden obstacle can leave very little time for safe correction near the vehicle within seconds. To prevent this, sanitation and utility crews must deploy reflective cones, flares, or warning signage well behind the vehicle before anyone dismounts into the street. Operators should also visually clear the adjacent lane before coming down, never assuming approaching drivers are paying attention. High in this rural yard, a worker cuts a heavy tree branch from a wooden ladder. Then the whole setup becomes unstable in an instant. Never position a ground ladder inside the drop zone of a suspended tree limb, and never operate a heavy chainsaw while balancing on an unsecured rung. When a large branch is cut, gravity pulls it along the path of least resistance. If it strikes the ladder, the worker can lose stable support in an instant. Workers should use aerial lifts or arborist climbing harnesses instead of ladders for overhead chainsaw work. At this industrial waste site, a worker steps onto what looks like solid ground. Then the surface proves unstable without warning. Never bypass safety rails or step onto an unverified surface near industrial waste pits, settling tanks, or vacuum truck extraction zones. Dust, chemical residue, or frozen debris can easily settle over open liquid reservoirs, creating the illusion of solid ground. The moment someone trusts that surface over established barriers, they risk entering a concealed hazard zone below. Facilities must secure all open vats, sludge pits, and containment zones with high visibility guardrails and steel grating that prevents human access. Workers should treat every safety barrier as a hard limit and never step into unverified areas. At the edge of a deep excavation, a crawler crane lifts a heavy wheel loader. Then the entire hoist becomes unstable within seconds. Never hoist multi-ton machinery without certified heavy lift rigging, and never position a crane near an unstable edge without calculating the forces involved. Steel cables and slings have strict working load limits. Once a suspended load pushes beyond those limits, control can be lost as extreme force transfers through the rigging and into the crane. Rigging engineers must calculate the equipment's full lifting load and apply an appropriate safety factor before the lift begins. Site managers should also establish wide exclusion zones below the load and around the crane's operating area. On this muddy construction site, a worker tries to cross a trench on a single wooden plank. Then it gives way under the load beneath him. Never use an unrated scrap piece of wood as a pedestrian bridge over an active trench or gutter. Ordinary lumber often lacks the strength to support concentrated body weight across an open span. The moment someone commits their weight to an unverified board, it can give way and cause sudden loss of footing near the trench below. Construction crews must span excavations with certified trench plates, engineered walkways, or rated scaffolding boards secured on both sides and equipped with handrails. Workers should avoid shortcuts and never cross using makeshift pathways that have not been safety approved. On this narrow roadside, a tractor and trailer move off the intended path, creating a serious roadside hazard. Never operate a heavy agricultural tractor in a pedestrian area without full steering control and constant visual focus on the path ahead. Tractors pulling fluid-filled tanks carry enormous momentum and a shifting center of gravity. A brief moment of distraction or a pedal mistake can send the machine off course. Operators driving heavy equipment through populated areas must reduce speed, keep both hands on the wheel, and continuously scan their surroundings. Pedestrians should also remain alert when large machinery is nearby and never assume it will hold a perfect line. Inside this warehouse, a worker walks through a transport lane without checking the lane, while a loaded forklift moves through the area from behind. Never drive a forklift forward when the load blocks your line of sight, and never walk through an active material handling lane without situational awareness. A forklift carrying tall pallets has significant kinetic energy. If an operator drives blind instead of reversing, the machine becomes an unguided vehicle capable of creating a serious contact hazard in its path. Forklift operators should travel in reverse when carrying tall loads and constantly monitor their surroundings. Facilities must also enforce pedestrian exclusion zones. In this narrow alley, a worker carries a heavy AC unit up a ladder on a makeshift platform. Then the entire setup becomes unstable. Never place an extension ladder on temporary scaffolding, mobile platforms, or loose planks to gain extra height. Ladders exert strong downward and lateral force at the base when weight shifts near the top. If that base rests on an unstable platform, the entire setup can become unstable under load. Technicians should position ladders only on solid level ground and use aerial lifts or boom trucks when the working height exceeds the ladder's safe reach. Heavy equipment such as AC condenser units should be hoisted with proper lifting systems instead of being carried up ladders. Inside this busy auto shop, an SUV begins losing proper support on a two-post lift. Then one quick reaction makes the situation more dangerous. Never attempt to manually steady a vehicle that loses balance on an elevated mechanical lift. Passenger cars weigh thousands of pounds and depend on a precise four-point balance while elevated. If a lift arm moves out of position, the vehicle can shift unexpectedly, making manual intervention ineffective against the force involved. Mechanics must verify that all lift arms are locked and correctly positioned on the vehicle's frame before raising it. If a raised car begins to shift or tilt, technicians should immediately warn others and move clear of the area. On a factory floor, a worker enters the guarded area of an injection molding machine to clear a stuck part. While attention remains on the task, the machine cycle initiates and platen movement resumes. Injection. Molding machines rely on interlocks to prevent motion during access. If interlocks are bypassed, misaligned, or malfunctioning, movement may occur despite an open guard. Mold areas are designated restricted zones due to high closing forces. Verify guard function at the start of every shift. For internal clearing tasks, stop the machine and apply full lockout/tagout procedures. Treat internal access as a machine entry operation requiring verified zero energy and complete control isolation.